A new hate crime law comes into force in Scotland on April the 1st that will give the Scottish Government the power to silence their critics, persecute anyone who questions their gender ideology, and even criminalises Scots for cracking jokes in the privacy of their own home. So much for the land of freedom! And you don't need to go to a police station to report hate crime under this law. Over 400 third-party reporting centres have been set up across Scotland in places like a mushroom farm and a sex shop, so you can report someone for thought crime while you're picking up a double-ended clam breaker. This law is based on perception, not objective, measurable evidence. Police Scotland's guidance says the perception of the victim or any other person is the defining factor in determining whether an incident is a hate incident or in recognising the malice element of a crime. The victim does not have to justify or provide evidence of their belief. Evidence of malice and ill will is not required for a hate crime to be recorded and investigated by the police. So anyone can report anyone for anything, and the police will investigate, and even if they don't prosecute, they'll record it as a non-crime hate incident, so the accused person will have a black mark against their name in police records. This law is ripe for abuse. Left-wing activists are already bragging about weaponising the law to target people like J.K. Rowling for crimes such as misgendering, by which I mean correctly gendering, which is apparently replacing burglary as the key priority for Scotland's police force, who say they're going to investigate every single reported hate crime. This is while drug deaths surge to unprecedented levels in Humza's hopeless Scotland. You might be thinking, well, this is just Scotland. It doesn't affect me. Obviously, misgendering is a more urgent problem in a land of hairy women and men who wear skirts. A law like this could never come to the rest of Britain. But trust me, it will. Scotland is being used as a testing ground, just like it was for the poll tax or for nuclear power. Labour supported the Hate Crime Act in the Scottish Parliament. They'll be in power in Westminster soon, and they'll bring in a law like this for the whole of Britain. To get everyone in the mood for denouncing each other for thought crimes, Humza's hapless government have released a ridiculous campaign to promote it, featuring the hate monster. Let's have a look. The hate monster is small and ginger, just when you thought you'd got rid of Nicola Sturgeon. This line is very revealing. Then before you know it, you've committed a hate crime. An essential tenet of law is that it should be difficult to unknowingly break it. You can't imagine someone suddenly realising they're burglaring a house or selling heroin, but Police Scotland themselves admit that people will find themselves accidentally committing hate crimes. And are we now criminalising anger? In Aldous Huxley's dystopian Brave New World, the government kept citizens peaceful by feeding them soma, a mood-altering drug. In the Brave New Scotland, you're threatened with prosecution if you get angry. This whole thing is idiotic. People aren't seething with hate because people look differently to them. People are concerned about uncontrolled immigration from medieval cultures, the disintegration of British communities, parallel societies with completely different values to us, and Islamists being allowed to openly preach hate, biological males suddenly being allowed access to women's safe spaces, children being sterilised and maimed to fit in with the current mania for gender transitioning. There are legitimate concerns behind people's anger. And why are they using a Sesame Street-style cartoon for 5-year-olds to target angry young men? Do they know anything about angry young men? Where are the boobs? Where are the robots? Hilariously, the hate monster campaign itself breaches the new hate crime law. According to Police Scotland, hate crime is any crime which is understood by the victim or any other person as being motivated by malice or ill will towards a social group, one of the protected characteristics of disability, race, religion or belief, sexual orientation or gender identity. The campaign by Police Scotland says that it targets young men aged 18 to 30, particularly those from socially excluded communities who have white male entitlement. They're implying that hate is driven by poverty. That's blatant classism, and the term white male entitlement is a known racist dog whistle used to denigrate and minimise the opinions of people based on their race and their sex. This is even more serious when you consider that Police Scotland are an armed, ideologically motivated organisation under the command of known anti-white racist Humza Yousaf. Have a look at him.
Lord President, white. The Lord Justice Clerk, white. Every High Court judge, white. The Lord Advocate, white. The Solicitor General, white.
For this reason, I've reported the extremist, racist organisation Police Scotland to Police Scotland for hate crime. Hopefully, Police Scotland will soon show up to arrest Police Scotland. Of course, it won't happen. These laws will only work in one direction. They'll be used by the SNP to go after their enemies and silence their critics. We've already seen how this happens with the persecution of women such as Marion Miller. She's a feminist who's critical of the SNP's gender ideology, which allows men to self-identify as women to gain access to female-only spaces such as prisons. She was prosecuted after sharing a tweet of a suffragette ribbon, which was reported as a transphobic hate crime calling for violence because it could be perceived to be a noose, which is obviously ridiculous. The case was thankfully thrown out of court, but the process subjected Marion and her children to a huge amount of distress. The state was sending a message to her and to other people who oppose them, saying, "We can come after you. Even if we can't prosecute you, we can arrest you, terrify your children, smear your name." And the SNP don't stand up for women's rights. Bizarrely, the list of protected characteristics in the Hate Crime Act includes gender identity, but doesn't include biological sex, even though women are targeted based on their sex and are hugely overrepresented as victims of violence. And I doubt we'll see Police Scotland targeting the real hatred in Scotland, the anti-Tory and anti-English xenophobia that's festered under years of rule by rabid nationalists. The SNP are Scotland's answer to the BNP. They marched shoulder to shoulder with ethno-fascist group Sean Gael while the police did nothing. But then again, they're not a police force anymore. They're the street enforcement arm of the insane left-wing ideologists who've taken control of Scotland.